Welcome, dear readers. You're listening to Time to Read, a Winnipeg Public Library podcast book club. We are recording today from a couple of locations around Winnipeg, which is within Treaty 1 territory, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ininew, and Dakota peoples, and in the National Homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. In this episode, we will be discussing Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. I'm Trevor from the Louis Riel Library, and I was going to attempt that whole opening in a fake Irish accent, but I thought better of it. Across the screen for me is...
I'm Toby, I'm an outreach librarian, and I thought there would be more leprechauns.
A good book can carry me away from an average and ordinary day, yeah. So keep it down, leave me alone, close the doors and turn off the phone, 'cause all I ever really need is a little more time to read.
And you, dear readers, we wouldn't be able to do this without you. Well, I mean, we could, but it's more fun with you. We'd love to know what you think about the books we're reading. You can find our email address and all of our social media outlets by going to wpl-podcast.winnipeg.ca and scrolling to the bottom of the page. Hang around until the end of the episode to enjoy our most wordy segment, Nerd Words for Word Nerds. Did I say that right? Nerd Words for Word Nerds. I said so fast the first time, I wasn't sure. But before we proceed any further, let's check in with the panel, which consists, as you know, of Toby and myself today.
Yeah.
So
Dennis
there you are. What?
He's sick.
Yeah, Dennis is sick. He has a cough.
Yeah.
I can only surmise that it was from spending the night in a coal shed.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean...
No more coal sheds for Dennis.
No way. You know, I know he was really trying to, get into the characters in the book and thinking, trying to experience, but not a good idea. Not in this weather.
No, a lot colder in Winnipeg than in Ireland.
Exactly. We wish Dennis the very best in his recovery, especially because we selfishly hope he recovers soon enough to edit this podcast for us.
Yes, it will need a lot of editing.
Yes, because, I mean, spoiler, there may or may not be a word that Toby is going to use in a few minutes that, might make us clutch our pearls.
Perhaps.
So, what you got there, Toby? What do you got for us this month?
So I had talked in our last episode about Bridget Jones's Diary,
Yes.
both the book and the movie. And what recently came up in my YouTube algorithm was that there's a brand new Bridget Jones's Diary movie coming out early next year. And from the preview, it looks like Bridget Jones is now widowed and she has a couple kids and she has to, learn how to get her groove back. And
Wow.
It appears that Hugh Grant is in it still, and it looks like maybe the ghost of Colin Firth.
Holy.
So I am very much looking forward to that.
I'm assuming, is Renee Zellweger in it as well? Okay.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Did I ever tell you my Renee Zellweger story?
No.
I was at I think it's called the Palm Room, the Fort Garry Hotel,
Okay,
a large, fancy hotel in Winnipeg for those who are not from the city. And it's often known as a haunt for people to go to if they are making movies in the city or whatever, like celebrities have been spotted there in the past. And I was there with my wife and her cousin. And my wife said, "Oh, over your shoulder right now, there's Renee Zellweger having a bowl of soup." And she made me and her cousin turn and look and confirm, because she said if we didn't turn and look, we would always deny that it was her. Mm-hmm. And all I can say is that it was a woman that looked very much like Renee Zellweger enjoying a bowl of soup.
What kind of soup?
It was a cream soup. So it might have been cream of mushroom. It might have been cream of celery. I don't know. I didn't get that close.
Was there a Renee Zellweger filming in Winnipeg at that time?
There was.
There was.
So, I mean, it does check out. But I did not go up to her, of course, because I thought that would be poor form. No one wants to be interrupted while they're enjoying a bowl of soup.
Maybe she was waiting. Maybe she saw you turn around and she was excited.
Maybe, there are some celebrities, I suppose, that do like to be noticed. And maybe if they're not, it makes them sad.
Yeah.
So Renee Zellweger, if you happen to be listening to this podcast, my apologies. And congratulations on your continued career. I do have I have a follow-up from last episode, too, if we're talking about, Toby, you had mentioned the film version of Pride and Prejudice, and that the guy that plays Darcy was this handsome guy. And just recently, the last couple of weeks, I watched the Disney Marvel film Wolverine and Deadpool, or Deadpool and Wolverine. And there was a British guy in it I thought was quite handsome. And sure enough, same actor who played Darcy was in Deadpool and Wolverine. So, yeah.
All right. Matthew McFadden, right?
Yes, exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he played kind of a baddie in this one. So just if you happen to, yeah. Still good though. I looked. I was like, oh, have I seen this guy in something? So I had to check his IMDb page, and I hadn't seen him in anything, but the Pride and Prejudice popped up, and I was like, there he is.
You should also watch Succession.
I should also watch the what?
Succession, the TV show.
Okay, right. I don't know how to get that. In this day and age, you have to have a platform, and you have to have a subscription.
It's true.
Yeah. If you would like to deliver it to me on a DVD, I will watch it.
I'll look into it.
If they still make DVDs, I don't know. Well, that's great. So we can all look forward to that new Bridget Jones movie. Yes. And perhaps that will encourage the library to get copies of the first one.
Yes, good point.
We're going to go on now to our next section. We don't have Dennis here to kind of move us along. We're kind of...
It's true. We're just going to ramble.
Yeah. So we'll feel Dennis's invisible presence in the editing, because the past 10 minutes will just be gone. But before we get right into the meat of the podcast, well, I guess this is the meat. That was the salad. Toby's going to tell us about the author, Claire Keegan, what she's all about. And then myself will give us a summary of the book. So
all right.
Take it away, Toby.
Okay, so Claire Keegan. Claire Keegan was born in 1968 in Ireland, the youngest of 6 children, and raised on a farm. At 17, she moved to New Orleans to study political science at Loyola University, but thanks to an inspiring professor, she ended up studying literature as well. She moved back to Europe and completed a MA in creative writing at the University of Wales and an MPhil at Trinity College in Dublin. She published Antarctica, a collection of short stories, in 1999. It was a Los Angeles Times Book of the Year and won the Rooney Prize for Irish Literature. Her second collection, Walk the Blue Fields, was published in 2007. Her long short story, Foster, appeared in The New Yorker in 2010, was included in the Best American Short Stories 2011, and was adapted for a film, which was nominated in 2023 for an Oscar for Best International Feature Film. Small Things Like These was published in 2021. It was shortlisted for the Booker Prize. It was also adapted for a movie that premiered in February of this year. Her short story, So Late in the Day, was chosen by George Saunders for the New Yorker Fiction Podcast, in which authors read and discuss a story that has appeared in the magazine. However, Saunders refused to read it aloud as it had many repetitions of the word cunt. All of her published work is short stories and novellas, and she's been praised for her economy of language. As she has said in an interview, elegance is saying just enough, and I do believe that the reader completes the story. That is it for Claire Keegan.
That's great. Small Things Like These. I wasn't sure if you were aware when you picked it how short it is. You did, yeah. So the e-version that I had appeared as only 50 pages on my iPad. And the actual, not much longer than that. So, but let's just go over a quick summary of it. Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan is a poignant novella set in a small Irish town in 1985. It follows Bill Furlong, a coal merchant, husband, and father to 5 girls. The second novel in his main months, where we have a family with 5 girls.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Yes, he is a father to 5 girls, and he navigates his daily life during the days leading up to Christmas. Bill is a decent, hard-working man who is appreciative of the life that he has built, considering he was born to a single mom and, to quote from the book, came from nothing or less than nothing, as it says. He faces a moral dilemma when he discovers a troubling secret at the local convent. A young girl is locked into the coal shed, seemingly for at least a few hours, maybe longer, and he's heard of the so-called Magdalene laundries and suspects the local convent may be operating as one. And just for a bit of context, a Magdalene laundry is a blanket term used for an organized system in Ireland, closely associated with the Catholic Church, but there are also ones run by Protestant churches and secular groups, especially before the creation of Northern Ireland in the early 1920s. And young women who became pregnant and who did not have the support of their family would often be sent to these laundries to work unpaid and to carry their babies to term, where they often were then adopted out without the mother's permission. So Bill, once he sees this, he cannot ignore it. And his internal struggle revolves around whether to intervene and expose the wrongdoings or to protect his family and business from the potential fallout. And through the story, Keegan explores themes of moral courage, guilt, and the quiet weight of individual choices within a close-knit community. So,
So how did you find this book?
Well, I was going to say, do you want to say it or should I say it? Yeah. Well, I mean, I think this is one of those books that when I was reading it, I was kind of imagining George Saunders reading it and then like picking up the phone and calling his agent and saying, what do you mean I can just publish my stories one by one? You know, like, you know, because it is a long short story, but I have seen stories this length included in collections before with other stories. And, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? I was underwhelmed with the length of it at first, but I think what I did was maybe I read it too fast because before I knew it, I was at the end. So it kind of forced me to go back and reread it, but at a much kind of slower pace with a little bit more attention to detail. And I picked up some details the second time through that I didn't the first. And then I started to think, I think that's maybe the best way to read this story and perhaps other stories by Claire Keegan is to really take your time with it because she packs a lot into each sentence, but at the same time, not spelling everything out. So that was my first impression. I enjoyed the novel. I thought that she was an excellent writer. And the fact that the story is set in its sort of like specific time and place in Ireland in 1985, I thought was kind of important. Like it was a time where things in Ireland were very unsettled in terms of politics and religion. And I thought Bill Furlong's character was very complex and interesting, like born Catholic, but raised in a Protestant household. I think at one point he was described as a Catholic with a Protestant work ethic. And also I loved some of just the casual phrases that she used. They remind me of my own grandmother who was born in Ireland at the beginning of the 20th century. And she would often just have these sayings. And one of them that came up in the book that made me think of it is the part where when Bill, he goes to that toy store to look for a puzzle of a farm and they don't have it. But then he decides to buy a little package of gummies or something because he said he doesn't want to leave with his arms the same length. And that's what my grandma used to always say about like so-and-so going to a party with his arms the same length, meaning that he hasn't brought anything or she hasn't brought, you know, you never go to someplace with your arms the same length. And so just seeing that phrase again, it was a nice reminder of my grandma who, you know, passed away when I was only 5 or 6. But yeah, so that's sort of my first initial thoughts. I just realized now I'm just talking and talking. So, Toby, what do you think?
This was not what I was expecting. I didn't know much about this book going into it. I had heard of it. I had seen the cover. I had seen that it was classified as like seasonal. So I think I was expecting something kind of cozy and Christmassy. And it is Christmassy, but definitely not cozy. But I did really enjoy it. I also read it twice, and I think I read when I was researching Claire Keegan that part of what she does when she's writing, she puts a lot of labor into making her stories seem effortless. And I felt that because it really is like the economy of words in this book, how there's nothing extraneous, but there's nothing missing. It's just this perfect little package. And every sentence has exactly what it needs, no less, no more. And I think it's really, what's the word I'm looking for? It's really remarkable. It's a skill, you know, it doesn't look like a skill. She makes it look effortless. And, you know, I think a lot of people coming to short stories think they're not as hard to write as a novel because it's less of everything, less narrative, less character development, less of everything. But you can really see the care that was taken in writing this and just, yeah, how everything fits into place.
It kind of made me think of that saying, you know, when someone says, how long should the story be or whatever. And then the answer is, well, how long is a piece of string? You know, like how long does it need to be just to wrap things up? And I feel like with a novella, she's not letting length dictate the story. She's letting the story go first. And if it happens to be longer than a traditional short story of 15, 20 pages, that's fine. And if it's not long enough to be a conventional novel length of 150 to 250 pages, that's fine too. Like you say, she writes the story, she pares it down, she keeps what needs to be there, she jettisons everything else, and we're left with this. It's almost like the essential oil version of a story where you can just have like one little drop of it and that's all you need. I was really in that world. Yeah, and I didn't know much about these Magdalene laundries. I didn't even realize that was a term that was used, but it struck me too, so many similarities between that system and our own shameful residential school legacy in Canada, a concerted effort between government and church. And it was interesting too, coincidentally, that apparently the last of these Magdalene laundries closed in 1996, which was the same year that the last residential school closed in Canada, in a similar way too. Like they had a commission and a formal apology from the government and the church. But it was hard not to think about residential schools. But the interesting thing with this story is it doesn't hit you over the head with the politics.
No.
It was only after I read it the second time that I kind of, like, it doesn't tell you this, but I guess if I was paying attention, I would have picked it up the first time. But I mean, the reason that this girl is in the coal shed is she's put there by the nuns. It's punishment. And I don't know why I didn't think of that the first time, but it's like they can make as big a deal about, finding her and giving her a bath and cleaning her up, for appearances. But no, it was an act of cruelty. And of course, it's confirmed when he goes back days later and she's in there again for whatever reason. So
yeah, I didn't know about the Magdalene laundries at all. I'd never heard of them until reading this book. And yeah, like you, I did note the similarities between the laundries and the residential schools, and even like reading up a little bit more on it. Like there was a mass grave found at one of them, and yeah, it's really striking, those similarities.
Yeah.
On a different tack. Is that an expression? A different tack?
Yeah, I think it might be like perhaps a sailing term. Isn't it?
Okay.
Like a tack, I think. I don't know anything about sailing, but I think it's like when you do something to the sails and you go a different direction, maybe.
Okay, well, let's change direction.
All right.
Because I don't know if this was just me, but this almost felt a little bit like a horror book in disguise. Because, okay, so there's these like cold, dark mornings. There's a lot of attention paid to the furnace and stoking the furnace and fires. There's the crows. Mm-hmm. There's the creepy convent with glass on the top of the walls. The creepy nuns. There's the girls at the convent who beg Furlong, take me to the river so I can kill myself. The girl locked in the coal shed. There's that anecdote. Is it Ned who's saying this anecdote about he was delivering hay to someone who needed it, and then there was like this creature with no arms?
Yeah.
There's like a scene where Furlong, he nicks himself when he's shaving. Like it had all of these elements that, like, if you put a different soundtrack on it, I feel like this could be a horror book. Did you get that at all?
I didn't get that sense when I read through it, but everything you're saying makes sense. And I can think of a perfect director. It would be that Dave Eggers guy, who did the movie The Lighthouse. I don't know if you ever saw that. It's with,
I'm thinking that's not the author, Dave Eggers.
I might have his name wrong.
Okay.
We'll put it in the show notes. But the guy who did like The Lighthouse and The Witch, with like very kind of Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, these two lighthouse keepers that eventually go crazy. But yeah, you're right. There are definitely those elements, and again, it goes to her not kind of planting seeds and letting the reader's imagination kind of fill in the gaps. Like, yeah, Ned is telling the story about this creature with no arms that come out, and that was like his sort of thing that kind of shook him out of like stealing the hay, because it was for like another farmhand that had a hungry goat or sheep or something. and that's something I think I glossed over the first time I read it. When I came back and I was reading, I'm like, what the hell? Like what
was that?
Yeah, what was that? And why was that just sort of like, yeah, he told me that story. And like, I mean, did Bill understand that to be just sort of like a superstition, or did he? Yeah, that was freaky. And the other kind of thing is just the hint or the suggestion that Ned is Bill's biological father. And it's never confirmed, and he's kind of doubting it. But, like, I mean, I'm not sure how you feel about that. I don't really understand why.
It's icky, right?
I mean, is that why it was never sort of came to the surface? Like, I'm thinking, like, if Ned was, like, Mrs. Wilson's, you know, handyman or whatever you want to call him, guy that works around the house, and Bill's mom is the maid that works there. And if she did get pregnant with Ned, like, why couldn't they just sort of, like, say, yeah, like, you know, that's, like, maybe I'm thinking of it as a more, like, from a modern sense, like, it would have been, like, the 1940s, right? Because they say Bill is almost 40. Mm. So it would have been, and maybe it's just any type of premarital, unwed
out of
pregnancy.
wedlock.
Yeah, like, but I mean, it just seems like that could have been solved. If it was Ned, couldn't it have just been easily solved? Like, they obviously cared for each other, or did they not?
I don't know if I'm just reading into this the wrong way, but I saw Ned as a fair bit older than the mother, Bill's mother, and that maybe there was, like, a rape or a sexual assault, or, like, she was taken advantage of in some way.
Oh, I see. I didn't think about that, but that makes sense, because let's say if Bill's mom was, like, even a teenager and working as a maid, and Ned was in his 20s or something. Mm-hmm. Even if it was consensual, it wouldn't have been like, and maybe it wasn't. Yeah,
that's how I saw it. And then also, at some point, Bill says, I think he says that they wanted me to believe I came from a nobler father, you know, not just this caretaker, this, you know, hired help.
Yeah.
So that was part of it too. But yeah, I did get the impression that there was something icky about the relationship between Ned and Bill's mom, and even despite the fact that the two were described as close and they would chat by the fire and things, there was still something off about it.
And there's a lot of sharing the milking of the cow duties symbolism too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And again, I think, you know, not to beat a dead horse, but again, this kind of goes back to the style of the book, that these are things that we can speculate about, and you have a theory of what it might be, and I maybe don't have a fully formed theory, and yet we're talking about something that is not on the page, but it's in the story, in the sense that we both read it and we both thought about that, so there's definitely something less is more, I think, sometimes when it comes to stories like this. The very end of the story, Bill, he makes a pretty big choice, in that he, despite the advice from his wife and the woman that runs the restaurant from the yard and everyone else to just not get involved, he decides to go back to the convent, and he goes back to the coal shed, and he takes the girl, Sarah, and brings her out and walks her through the town square even, up to his house. And the story ends there. So I'm wondering, what do you think happens if she wrote Small Things Like These, Part 2? Even smaller things.
Like, in an ideal world, you know, the family takes her in, she's their sixth daughter, she, you know, is treated the same. But I think in a more realistic situation, she would probably, the wife would send her back, say, you know, we can't take her on, send her back to the convent, and then she would probably disappear. Like, she'd be sent to another laundry.
Yeah, because I mean, even though, you know, Bill has a successful business and is seen as sort of integral part of this community, like Dennis noted in his notes, even though they were successful, they're still not well off. That they have to choose between, you know, tires on the company's van versus new windows in the house. So it's not like they could just, you know, absorb her into the household. And even if they could, the way the community would perceive that, it would just be like, blowing up your life, you know, I think. And maybe what we're left with as readers at the end is like, you know, we can't help but maybe put ourselves in Bill's shoes. And what would we do if we were presented with an obvious injustice, but with an out to not do anything about it, you know? And so we're kind of, we have to confront our own opinion. Again, of course, we never really know what we're going to do until we're in that situation. We'd like to think that we would do the right thing, but it's
Yeah, I mean, the whole book is really about sort of the complicity of, like, the whole community too. Like, they all know what's going on, but they think they're powerless to stop it. They kind of are powerless to stop it. But also, Bill's having a bit of a midlife crisis too, right? Like, he's a little worn down by the mundanity of his life, how it's all the same, every day's the same. And he's just looking for something to shake it up. And he finds this girl in the coal shed, and it becomes kind of his mission to try to save her. And yeah, I do worry about him because I think realistically they're not going to keep her. She's going to have to be sent back. And then poor Bill, like, he's going to spiral.
Yeah, you're right. And there is sort of that very Irish trait of contrarianness, where, you know, if someone says something, your first reaction is to kind of take it the other way or do the other thing. I like that scene where he initially finds the girl and brings her to the convent, and then the nuns are all inviting him in. He doesn't want to go in because he has a whole schedule of deliveries to make, but then he is finally in there, and then he gets the sense that the nuns are kind of done with him. And then he's like, just to spite them, he's not going to leave. Like, he stays longer than he overstays his welcome. And yeah, again, just almost as if to say, oh, what are you going to do about it? You know, I'm sort of like bucking convention here, just because he's bored, kind of. And like you say, like his life and all of our lives, I suppose, if you think of it, are made up of not, you know, big things, but, you know, small things that happen every day. And then you string enough of them together, and then that's your life. And like you're saying, you know, he's approaching 40, midlife crisis zone, and he's probably looking forward to the next 40 years and wondering, is his whole life being 6 days a week at this coal yard and scraping enough together for the family, and what's going to happen when his daughters are all grown up and out of the house. And so, yeah, maybe his action at the end wasn't completely selfless. Maybe it was just sort of like his way is like, this is the universe. He's like, screw it. The universe is giving me this opportunity. Let's just, again, typical Irish fashion, let's just blow this place up.
Is that typical Irish fashion?
I mean, let's just say sometimes things get blown up.
Okay. Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah, I thought it was a little, I mean, it wasn't the book's fault, but I think in the blurb I was reading about, I was under the impression there would be more of Bill's slow realization that this is going on and more of like an investigation. But you're right. There wasn't, like, it was, if anything, he already knew before he knew. And he just sort of needed the confirmation of that he couldn't look away. Like, cause I was surprised at how quickly in the book he was like, oh yeah, this is probably what that is. Like, it wasn't, and of course, when he kind of asked around about it, everyone was just like, yeah, I mean, of course it's that, but are you crazy? Like, you know, the church has their, you know, finger in every pie, and we've worked so hard for this life, and we're so grateful for it. Why are you jeopardizing that? Especially at Christmas, you know, but,
Did you watch the trailer for the movie?
I haven't. No. Did you see it?
I saw the trailer. It has, I'm probably going to say his name wrong, Cillian Murphy.
Oh, yeah.
He's like a really strange looking actor who's quite popular these days.
Yes. He was Mr. Oppenheimer in the film Mr. Oppenheimer. Yes. I believe that was
and
the
he's
title.
Irish, right?
He is Irish. The first time I ever saw him was in the Danny Boyle zombie movie, 28 Days Later.
Oh, okay.
He's very good in that. Yeah, he's got sort of kind of sunken, almost like haunted eyes.
Yeah,
Kind of a funny looking guy.
He's well cast. I mean, I think he's the producer of the film as well, so he has, you know, a lot in it. What I noticed in the trailer was they spend a lot of time showing the washing of the hands and like the scrubbing of the coal, and that seems to perhaps be a metaphor for something. But that's what I noticed most about the trailer.
It's interesting you say that, because again, like reading, this isn't in the book, but reading about the background of these Magdalene laundries, they often purposely had the young girls do laundry, because the whole idea of taking something soiled and making it clean, like that sort of metaphor was supposed to then, like by osmosis, turn these so-called soiled souls and clean them and stuff. And, so yeah, the imagery of washing the coal off the hands and stuff, I could see that being kind of a good through line, very visual image for the movie to take.
Yeah, I do wonder though, like I didn't look up how long this movie is, but this is a short story. So I do wonder if there's like a lot of silence in the movie, a lot of just scenes of the outside of the convent or, the rolling hills and the rain.
Yeah, I did look it up and it's just over 90 minutes.
Okay.
So not, very, very reasonable. So, but you're right. Even with that, they probably would have to, stretch it a bit.
Yeah, and what I did notice also in the trailer is there's a moment where he sees this young woman kicking and screaming and being forced into the convent. And then later he's at a cemetery and there's a gravestone that says Sarah.
Okay.
Yeah, so...
But that's his mom's name too, right?
Is it? Oh, yeah, you're right. That is his mom's name.
Yeah, because when the girl says Sarah, he's like, that's my mom as well, or whatever.
Right. Okay, so not necessarily the girl from the coal shed. Okay.
Right. Yeah, no.
Yeah, okay. That makes more sense.
Neither here nor there, but New Ross, Ireland, which is the setting of the story, is a real place. And guess what? They have a Google Street View.
And did you find anything?
I found the convent. Or should I say, without being sued, I found a convent on the edges of New Ross. So yeah, it's kind of an intimidating place. I didn't see any broken glass on the fences, but it's kind of fun taking a little drive around there and checking it out.
Is it sunny or cloudy in the?
It is very appropriately overcast.
Okay.
So it looked how I felt it should look.
Okay, good. Yeah. I feel like if it was, a bright sunny day, it would not be the same.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I didn't see any crows in the trees, but I'm sure they were there.
They were there. Yeah. No creatures without arms.
No, I'm sure if there was, a Google Street View would blur it out.
It's true.
Because the algorithm would be like, I don't know what that is. It might be human, but we better blur it. Yeah.
I mean, I guess. Well, I just had a thought. A crow doesn't have arms. It's have wings, though. But
that's true.
It'd be quite small.
Yeah. Earlier on, I think it was after Bill's first visit to the convent, and then he was just thinking about stuff, and he was kind of driving around, and he kind of got lost in the fog, and then there's an old man. Do you have like a goat or something? I can't remember. And then he asked for directions, and the old man just kind of like gave him a dumb answer.
This road will take you where you need to go,
or something, And I was like, thanks a lot, or whatever. So, I'm thinking, could it have been a goat? No, I feel like Ned would have, he grew up around farms. If it was any type of domesticated farm animal or something common, he probably would have said, oh yeah, the thing scared me. But the fact that he described it in such an inhuman, armless way.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I feel like there's probably a lot of superstition in this community and at this time. It also puts me in mind of Furlong's comments about how women seem very uncanny and they can almost read your thoughts and kind of mystical, superstitious type things.
Maybe that's where they pad the film. It's like a very long scene where Ned is being, menaced by this armless, furry thing. Kind of want to see it now.
Yeah. I'm sure they can really drag out that Christmas cake making scene as well.
Oh, yeah. And then christening it with whatever that whiskey was. I had to look that up, too. I was like, what does that mean? And I mean, I mentioned Dennis Rice. He kind of has very similar thoughts. He enjoyed the novel. And of course, he says it all very succinctly. And he was going to mention actually a movie called The Magdalene Sisters about 4 young women and their experiences in one of the Magdalene laundries that came out a few years ago. But it's not in our library system, but we can put a link to the, probably the IMDb or the Wikipedia page for it on our show notes. It sort of, packs a lot into a small package.
It really does. Yeah.
Do you think it's destined to become a Christmas classic like A Christmas Carol? Do you think people will be reading it 100 years from now?
No.
Yeah.
I do wonder why it is classified as a seasonal book in our collection.
Oh, is it really? It's actually got that. Yeah.
Yeah, it has the Christmas tree sticker on it.
Yeah, because sure, it leans heavily into the season, and the Christmas Carol book is name-checked in it as the sort of the book that Bill learned how to read on and stuff, but
not A Christmas Story, really.
No. It's as much a Christmas story as Die Hard is a Christmas film.
Well, Die Hard kind of is a Christmas film.
And hopefully we will be watching Die Hard 100 years from now. I mean, not you and I, probably, of course, but maybe our children's children. Oh, yeah. There's old Stinker. What's his name?
Yeah, Stinky.
Oh, boy.
Stinky. I feel like he's out of food right now and is trying to tell me, but he can wait.
For our listeners, Toby is recording from home today, and her cat, who is known as Stinky, has just appeared on screen, and he's looking hungry. Or she.
He, yeah.
Oh, very good. Apologies to you, Stinky. Keep on stinking. So, okay, if Dennis was here, he would be moving us to the next section, I think. So, and he likes to ask if we have any final thoughts before we move on. And I'm always a little not sure what to say during this part. So, I mean... Did
you like this book? I'm not sure.
Yes, I'm going to say yes, I enjoyed it. Again, one of the beautiful things about a book club is you read things that you otherwise may not even be aware exist. And this, I would say, definitely is one of those books. I had not heard of this author. I probably would not have picked up this book. Definitely glad I did. I enjoyed it. I read it, as I mentioned, twice. And it's not your typical seasonal Christmas book, for sure. But if you want to take your time with something, if you're the type of person that, say, would enjoy reading poetry, I think you would enjoy this. I mean, it's not poetry, but it's succinct the way that poetry has to be. And, I would recommend it.
Okay.
Yeah. How about you? How do you feel about it?
I liked it. I quite liked it. I think I liked it more upon a second reading. Yeah. And I'm going to check out more stuff by Claire Keegan because I like short stories a lot. And this is the first one I've read by her, and she has many more. So
same.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So Claire Keegan, if you happen to listen to podcasts, you've just gained 2, and I think I would say 3 more fans.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Our next section is called, Can You Tell Us About a Book That I Would Also Like? Why don't you go first, Toby, if you like?
Sure. Yeah, I will pull up my notes. Okay, so coincidentally, I ended up reading another book by an Irish author right after I read this book, and that is The Bee Sting by Paul Murray. And it seems like there's quite a lot of Irish fiction these days. It seems like there's a bit of a renaissance with that. I'm thinking of like Sally Rooney and Colm Toibin, Maggie O'Farrell, who's one of my favorites. So this is The Bee Sting, as I've said. Unlike small things like these, this is a very large book. It is over 600 pages. So I actually just finished it this morning in the waiting room of my orthopedic surgeon. And it is about the Barnes family, who were a well-to-do family in their small town. The dad owns a car dealership, but due to a recession, the business starts tanking and the family's economic status takes a downturn. And so the dad, he gets obsessed with building a fallout shelter. The mother is selling her belongings on eBay to try to keep the family afloat. The daughter is finishing up school, but isn't taking her final exams seriously and is drinking heavily. And the son is planning to run away from home. And the way the book is written is that you get portions of the book told from each character, which I really like. You get these various perspectives because, we're all the center of our own universe, but there's so much else going on with everyone around us that we're only maybe vaguely aware of. And like small things like these, The Bee Sting was shortlisted for the Booker. It has that kind of unique Irish dialogue. It does mention the Magdalen Laundries. It's not about the Magdalen Laundries, but they are mentioned, and that's a reference I wouldn't have gotten had I not read small things like these. And it's just generally the kind of straightforward literary fiction I generally really enjoy, but it is quite long. Like, I think it could have used a good edit, because over 600 pages, it's a lot. It's a lot. I was glad to be done with it today, but I still really enjoyed it.
That's excellent. The Bee Sting.
The Bee Sting, yes.
Okay. Well, the book I selected, it kind of went on a bit of a deep dive into the whole Magdalen Laundries history. So there's a book called Philomena by Martin Sixsmith. Now, it was written, and Martin Sixsmith is a journalist, British journalist, and worked for the BBC. He was made aware of Philomena Lee's story, who was born in the early 1930s. And when she was 18, she gave birth to a son, unmarried. This would have been in the early 1950s. So she stayed at some place called the Sean Ross Convent in County Tipperary. Now, I found out that there are multiple kind of operations. And so this one was called a mother and baby home. It wasn't technically Magdalene Laundry, but it was also run by the church. And when she gave birth to her son, she had to stay at this convent until she was 22, working unpaid. And then at that point, her son was adopted out to a family in the United States without her consent. After that happened, she left the convent and she moved to England. She got married and had 2 other children and became a nurse, and she had a whole career. And so throughout her whole life, her efforts to locate the whereabouts of her son were stonewalled by the church refusing to release the records. And so this is sort of where Martin Sixsmith, the journalist, comes in, because about 50 years after this happened, she actually, I'm talking about Philomena now, told her family that she did have this child, and they didn't know this whole time. She kept it a secret, and she did all the research on her own. And so it was actually her children that kind of got this journalist involved, and hoping his clout and his investigative skills would help. And so that's what the book is. It's a nonfiction story about Philomena's journey. And it was made into a movie in 2013. And the movie was slightly different in that it actually has Martin Sixsmith as a character in it, played by Steve Coogan. And Dame Judi Dench plays the titular Philomena. And so both book and movie are in our collection. And and that's Steve Coogan, not to be confused with Claire Keegan. I was going to say both good recommendations, but it feels like it's self-serving because one of the recommendations came from me. So, well, should we just move on to our final section, which everyone loves, and some people like to fast forward right to the about the 40-minute mark of every episode just to get this section. And you know, if you want to do that, I'm fine with that. But as long as you download it, we get the stats.
Yeah, that's true.
So this is Nerd Words for Word Nerds. This is our section that is everyone's favorite segment, where we share words and phrases that sparked our interest recently. Toby, do you have a word for us this month?
I do, and you almost spoiled it for me, Trevor, because it is the word baby power.
Oh, I'm glad I didn't say it.
Yeah. So you had mentioned briefly that we had talked about the Christmas cake at the end of one of the chapters. They're making a Christmas cake, and Aileen takes it out of the oven, and she is said to christen it with baby power. And I was like, what is that? Is this a myth of a typo? So I did look that up, of course. It is a hard term to Google because Google assumes you mean baby powder. But there is a type of Irish whiskey called Powers Whiskey. And in 1880, they launched a smaller bottle. It was 71 milliliters. And it quickly got the nickname Baby Powers. And it was particularly appealing because people could try it without shelling out for a full bottle, and it traveled well in a coat pocket. And I found this quote that said, "Baby Powers quickly became popular, especially by well-heeled ladies who could pop the baby in their purse whilst bringing out the paternal instincts of the male population. The baby power became synonymous with ordering a small drink." And apparently it also inspired other miniature bottles of alcohol, like the kind you find on planes or in minibars. So there you have it, baby power.
That's fantastic. And that kind of leads into my nerd word would be...
Oh, good.
The condition you'd be in if you had several baby powers. And the word is, right from the book, stocious.
That was my original word.
Because, whenever I come across a word I've never heard before, I'm duty bound to look it up. Mm-hmm. And shortly in this book, Eileen, Bill's wife, mentioned somebody being stocious the other night. And I had to look it up. And it simply means drunk. Too much alcohol.
It's like fancy word for drunk.
A fancy word for drunk, which it seems strange that it'd be a word that common folk would use, but maybe it's more common in Ireland than it is here. So stocious. And the other thing that's nice about stocious is it rhymes with extracalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Oh, perfect.
Stocious. I mean, not that you'd ever need to rhyme those two words, but and my second, I have a backup word, which is also from the book, and it's spelled Leanbh. Which
I wrote that one down too.
Yeah, which is a term that Bill uses throughout the book, and it's a term of endearment, Irish meaning child. And of course, I had to look up how it's pronounced. It's pronounced Leonov. Leonov.
Okay.
So, yeah, child.
So, are you calling your nearest and dearest that now?
I haven't started. No.
Okay.
I don't know if I will. Those are our nerd words for this month.
That sounded so sad, Trevor.
I know. Let's try that again. Wow, I would say those are probably the best nerd words we've had in a long time.
No, better.
But you know what? Unfortunately, that's all the time we have this month. Thank you so much for joining us, dear readers, and you, dear Toby. For our next episode, we're going to read and discuss the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. This is the way the world ends. Again. 3 terrible things happen in a single day. As soon, a woman living an ordinary life in a small town comes home to find that her husband has brutally murdered their son and kidnapped their daughter. Meanwhile, mighty Sanzi, the world-spanning empire whose innovations have been civilization's bedrock for 1,000 years, collapses as most of its citizens are murdered to serve a madman's vengeance. And worst of all, across the heart of the vast continent known as the Stillness, a great red rift has been torn into the heart of the earth, spewing ash enough to darken the sky for years, or centuries. Now Isun must pursue the wreckage of her family through a deadly dying land. Without sunlight, clean water, or arable land, and with limited stockpiles of supplies, there will be war all across the Stillness, a battle royale of nations not for power or territory, but simply for the basic resources necessary to get through the long dark night. Isun does not care if the world falls apart around her. She'll break it herself if she must, to save her daughter. Have comments or book suggestions for us? Send us an email. You can find all our contact info at the bottom of the page at wpl-podcast.winnipeg.ca. You can also find all our past episodes there too. If you haven't already, subscribe to Time to Read on your favorite podcasting service and maybe leave us a review. Tell your book-loving friends about us too. And until next time, make sure you find time to read.
All I need is time to read. All I need is time to read. All I need is time to read. All I ever really need is a little more time to read.
For our next episode, we're going to read and discuss the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. And I'm going to read a short description of this. This is the way the world... Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No.
This...
I was just thinking.
I'm looking at this script. It seems like it's a long... You know what? I'm not going to read this. I'm going to just...
Okay.
I'm going to say this is probably the absolute opposite to Small Things Like These.
Okay.
Where it's the opposite of short.
Oh, is it really long?
Yeah.
How long?
Well, it depends how you look at it.
Oh no.
Like
I'm sorry.
It's like a part of a trilogy.
Yeah, but is the book itself, like the first book or whatever it is it like 600 pages?
No, I don't think it's that long.
Okay.
But I was thinking of the whole trilogy as being one story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I thought I had done you and Dennis dirty for a second there.
No, that's okay. You know, I had a gift certificate to McNally, so I picked it up.
Oh, okay.
I'm already about maybe 40 pages into it.
But how long is it?
I mean, it's in my bag over... Yeah, I'll go... Just hang on a second.
Go get it. Go get it.
Actually, it was right next to me. I didn't have to go that far. It is, according to this paperback, 468 pages.
Okay. That's hefty.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely doable.
Okay.
But I'm also thinking that if we're going to record in December, we usually like to record a little bit earlier too, right? Because of the holidays. So we'll work all that out. And this is all stuff that Dennis can take out because this is more like inside baseball. And you know what? After thinking about it,
Dennis, start reading now.
Start reading now, Dennis. take this. I don't even know if he's homesick, or he's just not able to record.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know what? Maybe just for coverage, I should read this. And then we'll just wrap up. And then Dennis can decide whether he wants to use this or not.
All right.
Not to make more work for him, because I know he's in a time crunch, but